estamos en este segundo día ampliando la agenda, ahora sí para tocar temas relacionados con el mensaje coherente entre lo que hacemos y decimos, ¿no? Y vamos a discutir mucho este concepto del greenwashing, y tenemos para eso a un keynote speaker y a un panel que va a entrarle a este tema de manera directa, ¿no? Esto de la coherencia, cómo logramos una coherencia en esta estrategia dirigida a la integridad. Y finalmente, después del panel que vamos a tener hoy sobre la construcción de políticas públicas y esta agenda de integridad sostenible, vamos a cerrar el día también con otro keynote speaker de Global Compact, Gabriela Ocampo, que nos va a hablar de Transformational Governance. Así que con esta brevísima introducción, entonces le cedo la palabra a mi coequiper, a Majo Murcia. Por supuesto, primero agradeciendo a ustedes por participar, y sobre todo también a todo el equipo que ha venido asistiéndonos en hacer posible que esta conferencia tenga lugar. Majo, buen día,
Muy
bienvenida.
buenos días, gracias Raúl, gracias por esa síntesis. Y la verdad es que tenemos una agenda compacta y provocadora por delante. Eh, Como nos adelantabas recién, el primer impulso de esta jornada lo vamos a recibir de la mano del profesor Rajat Panwar de Oregon State University en Estados Unidos. Rajat es alguien realmente muy especial para mí. Rajat es quien ha sido un gran mentor, quien me ha formado en los temas de Sustainable Business Management durante su paso en la Universidad de British Columbia en Canadá, allá cuando yo hice mi programa doctoral. Y en los últimos años, Rajat ha estado trabajando, se ha dedicado muchísimo a estudiar cómo las empresas gestionan activamente la transparencia y su autenticidad, sus declaraciones de autenticidad. Actualmente, Rajat se está desempeñando como profesor asociado en Responsible Business Practices en Oregon State, y también se desempeña como consultor de Naciones Unidas y de FAO. Rajat va a estar dando su keynote en inglés, pero todos los participantes dentro de su barra horizontal de Zoom tienen la posibilidad de seleccionar el idioma en el que desean escuchar esta ponencia, siendo continuar en inglés o bien pueden cambiar a idioma español, para lo que contaremos con traducción simultánea. Así que los invitamos a disfrutar de esta charla y no dejen de seleccionar las opciones de audio de su preferencia para hacerlo con la mayor comodidad. Bueno, Rajat, the floor is yours, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much for, I believe, what would have been a very kind introduction, which I did not understand, but thank you, everyone. As Maria Jose, your wonderful professor at IAE Business School and one of the most revered scholars we have got in the field. As she was saying, I'm at Oregon State University. It is about 4:40 a.m. my time, pretty early in the morning. So my brain is very foggy. So I'm hoping that as the conversations go on, that I will become more and more alert. So this morning, first of all, I want to thank all the organizers. I have looked into your schedule, your program. This is a wonderful conference, and on the pretext of ESGs, which I am aware that you are hearing a lot about from various experts in this forum. This is one of the top topics, and as it is happening alongside COP27, this is really a wonderful timing for all of us to reflect on where do we want to go further, both in terms of business engagement in addressing societal issues, grand challenges, the sustainability crisis that we face, and also beyond as the society collectively. So in the business world, we do know that for last several years, corporations, while they have been trying to engage with societal and environmental issues and pursue a wide range of sustainability initiatives, at the same time, there is a concern worsening concern about accusations of greenwashing and being engaged in wrong activities, deception, and all that. So my brief remarks today are meant to highlight the importance of that, how important it is to be good, but at the same time, and I think critically, that you continue to look good, which is something that all organizations in the business sector and even beyond are, that is something that they have to pursue. So the title, as you can see now, is Being Good While Looking Good, and how do we avoid concerns of greenwashing through transparency and authenticity. So very quickly, in the next few minutes, I will walk us through my thoughts on this topic. Well, first of all, let me start with this dynamic here. There are four interlinked societal trends actually that are driving these greenwashing concerns. They are not only interlinked; they are actually propelling each other, as you see. And so, first one is, of course, the misconduct, and that is that, of course, several corporations in the world, many of them very leading corporations, they have been engaged in many activities that they should not have. Volkswagen's case is known to all of us, and you can go back as far as like Enron's case, and even quite recently some of the activities that Tesla, one of the the so-called sustainable companies in the United States, the kind of activities they were found to be engaged in during the COVID lockdowns and all that. So misconduct is happening, no doubt about it. There are many corporations that could be doing better. And then because of this misconduct and because of the way we live in the society, the scrutiny is increasing too. Media scrutiny is increasing, of course. We live in a society that is much more transparent than it used to be before. Social media has made things, dramatically different, and actually in some ways societal scrutiny is not even comparable to what it be just even a decade ago, just because the transmission of information and videographing and sensing and remote sensing and all that has, and surveillance tools have become all too common. So misconduct and scrutiny is certainly something that is beyond, these are mega trends beyond corporate influences and control. And at the same time, there are these two other issues that I think are even more paramount to this problem that we are handling here, which is distrust and the big disconnect. And let me explain them a little bit because they need to be shed a little bit further light on. So let me talk about distrust for a moment. Distrust research is showing, and this is not just a time snapshot. Research showing for the last easily 2 decades or so that societal distrust in all institutions is actually growing globally, whether it is government, whether it is business, whether it is media, whether it is NGOs. We are becoming more and more skeptical of their ability to deliver on the goals that we expect them to. The trust is declining, the distrust is growing. And if I disentangle, what do we mean by trust or distrust? The research in this field is suggesting that it could be thought of comprising these two elements. One is whether we think an entity, whether business or government or media or NGO, whether they are ethical or competent, meaning they are honest and they are able to deliver on what they want to. So let's look at where these 4 institutions fall on this quadrant. And these are based on global averages, so may not apply to, for example, let's say Argentinian context or American context, but this is a global scenario. So this is where, globally speaking, the government seems to be like majority in the world. People think that the government is both unethical and incompetent, is not delivering. this is where we see that media is unethical and also incompetent. This is where NGOs are. And if I was doing a if we were in a in-person setting, I would ask you, where do you think the business would fall? But just imagine I'm asking you, and in your mind, actually, business is generally considered on a global scale here. So, all things considered, at a global level, people think that business is on the competent side. They do things well, they deliver, they're effective, and they're efficient also. And yet they fall in this unethical category of perception that they are not doing things right. And again, let me repeat myself, this kind of a mapping could look very different across the continents and different countries. And I don't know what it would look like in Argentina, but at some point it would be wonderful to come there and see how it does look like. Anyway, and so societal trust, as I said, it is declining in business, and what we are seeing is that majority of respondents, this is based on a global survey, that the decline in trust is actually across the industry sector. So whether it is financial services, consumer, energy, fashion, you can see all these, even education institutions, and all the way to manufacturing and technology firms, the trust in business is declining at a global level. And in fact, if you see the trust in brands originating from different countries, let's say, German brands tend to have higher reputation, relative to, for example, Indian and Chinese brand and from other developing countries. But societal trust in global brands originating from these various countries as well is declining. So, and I'm not providing details of where and which countries, how much the decline is, but we can say that the decline overall is across the board. So societal trust is declining not only across the sectors, but also from brands originating from different countries. And these two combined is a constant trend. And so that is why I go back to those four cogs that I was showing: the distrust, and the next point that I'm coming to, the disconnect, that these are two really concerning issues. So what is that disconnect that I have mentioned already a couple of times, the big disconnect? The big disconnect is this. Well, so for the last 3 decades, corporate sustainability claims have become ubiquitous. I have not had the good fortune to come visit the situation in Argentina, but in the United States and Europe, where I mostly work for my research, every company is claiming to be sustainable. I mean, if you look at global scale, 90% of the world's Fortune 200 companies claim to be sustainable. So on one hand, we do see that this, what we call the golden era of sustainable business is here. So you should see some change in the state of the affairs, both in societal and environmental realms. That's not the case, actually. Half of the total carbon dioxide emissions since the Industrial Revolution have occurred during these last 3 decades. So the question people ask is, what are you doing? So we have distrust, and then we have this disconnect, we have that scrutiny, and we have corporate wrongdoings. So we have got a perfect storm of accusations, that is greenwashing. So the question as executives you would want to ask is, how do we avoid greenwashing? And one simple one-line answer would be, well, do not engage in deception. Yes, that is fine, but a lot of executives understand that. And I have met very few in my life over about 2 decades of engagement in corporate sustainability. Most executives at senior level or mid-senior level, they are aware that they don't want to engage in something which is what we call blatant deception. But it still happens. And so then as an executive, what do you want to keep an eye on? I would say one is, the first most important is exaggeration. make sure that your organizations are not crossing the boundary and that you are not saying more than what you can defend. The second is what we can say obscuration, that is blurring, and that is like sometimes organizations saying our products are natural. Like, what does natural mean? Or our products are eco-friendly. What does that mean? So be a little bit more clear on those things. The third one is be watchful of irrelevance. There are some products and some companies that say that our products are CFC free, or some products that are banned by legislation anyway. So that's kind of like, that's an irrelevant point. I have seen in some countries, actually, the water being sold as organic. And you see, what does that mean? Do not engage in anything that you cannot provide sufficient proof for. And this is something that I see over and over and again. Sustainability units within companies send a very different message for advertisement, which is very difficult to defend later on. And finally, this ties to some of my ongoing research, that is, do not engage in what I'm calling in some of this work empty echoing. And what does that mean? A practical example of that is net zero emissions. Everybody is talking about, politicians are talking about, the UN started the word, and then somehow organizations, business sector companies got on this bandwagon. And while there is a very clear sense of what does net zero look like, a lot of organizations are giving us targets and measurements and all those kind of things, I meet people day in and day out that have no understanding of what it means to be a net zero, but they are just saying, oh, we want to be net zero, we want to be net zero, without actually even understanding what they are committing to. And I am afraid that these kind of things come after the organizations and then become real pain in the rear later. So this is one thing. But at the end of the day, I must say that greenwashing is a social value judgment. Society decides whether you are greenwashing or not. And so for that reason, unreasonable accusations and expectations are not uncommon. You might think that you are doing great, but society might think you are not. So the question then becomes is that goes a little bit in the marketing realm also. So there are 4 or 5 quick lessons that I want to share with you, like how do you manage social evaluations in order to look good? There are 4 messages. First one of those is tell a relatable story that speaks to both heart and mind. And I will show some of the commercials from the US that will give you a sense of what kind of what do I really mean when I'm sharing these messages. And so sometimes I may have to cut the commercial short in the interest of time, but still I will try to get the point across, and of course perhaps Professor Murcia will share these slides with you in case anyone is interested in taking a deeper look at these commercials. So let's start. 7th generation is a company that measures success view.
I believe in products that don't just clean, but are truly clean.
The clean itself has no smell.
That clothes should smell like clothes, not perfume.
That babies should smell like babies.
That when I clean my home around my family, I shouldn't have to open the window first.
That with the right science, you can make products from plant-based ingredients instead of petrochemicals that work just as well as conventional brands.
I believe consumers have an absolute right to know what's in the products that they buy.
That our secret ingredient is that we have no secret ingredient.
Yeah, so I'll keep it there. The point is that they are bringing people together so that the idea is that a story that a lot of people, a wide variety of demographics and societal segments can relate to. And later in the commercial, they talk about both the science of it and the emotions associated. Promote what people love, not what they hate. And this goes back to the emerging trend of artificial meat or plant-based meat actually in the United States. And this is how they are actually in the entire commercial. Nowhere they say that don't eat meat. Beef, which is one of the largest causes of deforestation, as some of you might know. But what they are saying is that, oh, meat is good, you keep eating what you are bought. switch to this kind of meat. And nowhere they say that eating this is bad. They are saying that switching will be better. And again, in the interest of time, I will cut it short, but you can take it. I'll stop it there. Again, the point is that that it is best to engage with people's positive emotions rather than negative. Some of you may have heard about the big brand Patagonia in the United States, and I think this is one commercial that I will show full. Position your brand as the best of the bad options, and it is a wonderful classic case of transparency and clarity.
Patagonia is a great example of a strong brand that has basically said, we're going to go as transparent as we can.
Anybody working in the environmental field knows if you're not talking about what's wrong, you're not telling the whole story.
You don't have to be worried about telling everybody of the bad things you're doing, as long as you say that we're working on these things. But if you try to be dishonest, try to hide it, it's going to come back and bite you in the
They did something a couple years ago called the Footprint Chronicles, where they put up on their website the story of the products that they were selling.
It was one of the first really progressive approaches to transparency. Through their choosing, they came to people and they said, we're going to show you how our products are made. When I looked at it, it's not good news.
This is Patagonia, like the environmental outdoor brand, talking about, we put toxic chemicals on your jacket you're wearing.
And it's so common to say, oh, what's the challenge? What's the opportunity? It's like, no, it's bad. It's just bad. So we just laid it out there of here's what's good, here's what's bad, and then what we think. And it was a scary notion. If we put it out there, it turns a lot of confrontations into a conversation.
The consumer has proven that they don't expect perfection. Time and time again, when companies have used transparency right, the consumer hasn't looked at the truth and said, oh, it's not perfect enough, I'm moving on. They're very realistic about it.
I don't think advertising is enjoying the same luxury it once had. We're all skeptics today. We've all heard it far too many times. Clear is the new clever. And you need to be clear in your messages. Clever doesn't work anymore.
And that is the message that I want to deliver, is that clear is the new clever. So, you know, I don't think that it hurts companies to be very, very, very clear about what is wrong in the products and the processes and all that. And then say that, you know, we are working on it and we are trying to improve, and we are better than the competition and all that. Remember, let's go back to the title of this slide. Here we are trying to focus on how do you manage social evaluations. So some of the social evaluation management happens through managing expectations. And so managing expectations means that we tell people what's going on in the world and what are the real challenges in the sector as a whole. Relating your brand with a movement can be really, really helpful for some of the product and some of the companies, if you can find the right kind of movement. And in some cases it is really difficult, but in case of some consumer companies, we have seen that it has worked quite effectively. Let me quickly show you this last 30 seconds.
Let us tell you a little something about our chocolate bar. It's unequally divided, which is indeed difficult to share equally. However, it's going to stay that way because our chocolate tells an important story. Let us explain. Here's where 60% of all the world's cocoa comes from. There are lots and lots of cocoa plantations here, where cocoa farmers work incredibly hard for very little money, and where children are forced into doing illegal and dangerous work, so that big chocolate companies can purchase cocoa for a low price in order to become even bigger and richer. So, as long as the chocolate industry is unequally divided, our bar will stay that way too. Tony's vision is 100% slave-free chocolate. Not just our chocolate, but all chocolate worldwide.
So these are 4 big picture lessons that I wanted to share. But we also recently completed a project on the complexity of managing transparency. And so it so turns out that actually this paper came out in press just last night as I was finalizing the presentation. So stars are aligning in more than one way, and in fact here. I will share just two key messages with you based on this project that Roy Sudabi, who is another colleague on the board of the center that Professor Murcia heads here at Austral University and at IAE. And so we shared two big, I mean, there are multiple things that we are saying in the article, but with you, I would like to share just these 2. One, corporate executives should not confuse that transparency is the same thing as authenticity, or for that matter, secrecy is the same thing as manipulation. Modern organizations, or for that matter, even ancient organizations, cannot afford to become fully transparent. Secrecy is important. You are competitive entities after all. So it is the most important thing is that your actions are perceived as authentic, even if sometimes they invoke or they give a sense that you are being secretive, or you are protecting privacy, or you are protecting your patents, or you are protecting your other intellectual property rights. So we should be very clear that transparency is not the same thing as authenticity. And our argument in this paper is that that authenticity is a more valuable concept and more valuable ideal for organizations to pursue than simply transparency. The second one is, and related to it, is that intelligent managers should cultivate organizational cultures that openly value both transparency and secrecy. And they should not masquerade themselves as transparent leaders, because, as I said, sometimes they will have to practice the art of secrecy. So managing the both is critically important. So in addition to those 4 messages that I drew from my experience in the world, these 2 are being added to the list based on our most research. So finally, where do I want to end this conversation? The first is aim for authenticity and be clear about limits of transparency, both within the organization and beyond. Tell your stakeholders that you can be transparent only to this extent, beyond which it starts to bite into your competitive advantages. And if you end up making any mistakes, which does happen, we are all humans and are susceptible to be making mistakes. Saying sorry sooner than later is, I think, the best approach. This is what we have learned in the last 3 decades of experimentation and research in greenwashing. And so these are the 3 things that I will leave you today to ponder with. And thank you very much for the opportunity. And I hope that some of the messages resonate. And if they do not, that they will inspire some thinking to either accept those or refute them or to discuss them further. Thank you very much. I wish I could say it in Spanish, but I know I will butcher it, so I'll just leave it there. Thank you very much, Professor Murcia, again. Everybody, Patricia has done a wonderful job facilitating it, and everyone else. And my wonderful translator, Mr. Ignacio. Thanks, everyone.